Hello and welcome to No Automation Challenge. Last episode I visited the Nether, made aluminium and polyethylene. In this episode I will make a lot of different metals and solve hunger problems. As you can see, I don't have a lot of circuits, but I need them for the future. As I don't have any more cover, I need to make it. I can either make a PBF and smelt cobalt matte, or mix cover dust, and for that I need cobalt. I can't electrolyze cobaltite leach, as it's an HV recipe and needs a cobalt rod. Or theoretically, I can smelt cobalt oxide in an EBF, but cobalt oxide is made from cobalt and oxygen. The only way is to leach cobalt residue from zinc processing. And that is a long process requiring multiple steps. Of course, PBF is the much easier way, and that's why I will process Sphalerite. Sphalerite does exist in Overworld, but only as a sporadic ore. It's very common in the Beneath, and there I found it immediately. I need to be careful mining down, because the Beneath is just a big cavern, and a fall would not be fun.
Oh my god!
Oh, baby, it's triple! Oh, yeah!
I know I am the greatest player, but you're not here to watch me clutch falls, but to suffer. So I mined as much as I can and came back to the surface. As soon as first stack of Sphalerite was made into dust, I put it into roaster, supplied it with oxygen, and waited for first zincite. Then leached it in a chemical bath with sulfuric acid. Zinc leach must be then mixed with zinc cementation slurry to precipitate copper-cadmium residue. Then heat up the leach and reprecipitate to get cobalt residue. Reprecipitated zinc leach can be electrolyzed in electrolytic cell, which is missing. So I made one specifically for that electrolysis. At least I will recycle the sulfuric acid and won't need to make more. And after I built it, I electrolyzed my first zinc. And I have to do that cycle many more times. So let's keep it going. I think it's a good time to mention how much cobalt do I want. I would like to make 2 stacks of LV circuits and a stack of MV circuits. Combined, it's 4 stacks of LV. One LV circuit is 1 vacuum tube, and a vacuum tube is 1 cover ring. So 4 stacks of cover rings, which is 2 stacks of cover. It can only be made in batches of 18, and that's at least 8 crafts. 1 craft takes 3 cobalt dusts, so 24 cobalt in total. 24 is not a cool Minecraft number, so I will make 32. And as 1 cobalt dust is 20 cobalt residue, I need 640 cobalt residues in total. And so, I made the first stack of cobalt residue, and then the second one, and then I forgot to record me getting each stack, so now you can see me just having 10 stacks made. There's not much left to do with it, so I just put it into a centrifuge to spin out the cobalt. For cover, I also need nickel, so I process some garnierite. Nickel and iron are combined into invar, and it is combined with cobalt into cover. Hello, and this is how to extract cobalt from Sphalerite. Sphalerite is roasted with oxygen to produce zincite and zinc flue. Zincite is leached with sulfuric acid to produce zinc leach residue and zinc leach. Zinc leach is precipitated twice to produce copper-cadmium residue and cobalt residue. Reprecipitated zinc leach is electrolyzed in electrolytic cell, and oxygen from electrolysis is sent back to the roaster. Sulfuric acid is looped back into electrolytic cell through fluid regulator and to a centrifuge and chemical bath for leaching. Zinc is outputted from the back to a zinc cementation slurry mixer. Distilled water is produced on site and is sent to electrolytic cell and the zinc cementation slurry mixer. Zinc cementation slurry is sent to precipitation mixers, and as for cobalt residue, it only needs a centrifuge, where the cobalt is sent to final products, and zinc leach is sent back to precipitation. And that's really the only way to get cobalt in LV. Cobaltite electrolysis needs cobalt rod and HV power. And cobalt oxide can only be made by roasting cobalt and oxygen. Wait, there was an EBF recipe this whole time? Coming back to cover, smelting it in an EBF takes over 90 seconds for one ingot. So while it was cooking, I collected sand, made arc furnace for better glass and annealed copper, and used it to make components for circuits. I obviously haven't waited for all of cover. I took what was produced and made it into rings. And when the first vacuum tubes were done, I started making new circuits. And when the first few circuits were made, I made a second EBF. I will smell the rest of cover off camera, so let's go to the next part. Hey, pause, you haven't finished. What? What do you mean? What's in this crate? Residues from processing zinc. Yeah, and you said you will process all of Sphalerite. So, should I go back and do it? Of course. Also, I'm taking the chrome card with me, so you won't cheat. So, that was my evil twin, and he was kinda right. Just look how much residue I have. And so, I need to process it. And the easiest is copper-cadmium one. Just react with sulfuric acid to separate the copper. Then precipitate with zinc to get cadmium sponge. And that means I have to make more sulfuric acid. And with a new batch of sulfuric acid, I started processing the residue. The cadmium sulfate resulting from it is turned into sponge, and the sponge is reacted with air and more sulfuric acid. And so, I've reacted the sponges. Purified cadmium sulfate is then electrolyzed to get solid cadmium. At least, I will get some sulfuric acid back. But back to the sponges. They consume a lot of air, and my air vent was too slow, so I placed the gas collector. Who the fuck is useful? Purified cadmium sulfate electrolyzes rather fast, so not even a minute later I completed the quest for cadmium. Copper cadmium residue is made in the first mixer and sent to a batch reactor. Sulfuric acid is sent from outside, as there is not enough recycling, and copper is sent into storage. Hydrogen and cadmium sulfate are sent in a quad pipe, and hydrogen is voided in a flare stack. Cadmium sulfate is precipitated by zinc, wastewater goes into a damper, and cadmium sponge goes into third batch reactor, where with sulfuric acid and air from this air column it is purified into purified cadmium sulfate. Purified cadmium sulfate is electrolyzed in an electrolytic cell, cadmium goes to storage, sulfuric acid goes to batch reactor, and oxygen goes to roaster. Now, for the zinc leach residue. I need to react it with diluted hydrochloric acid to extract indium. Then react the indium leach with soda ash to extract impure indium. And the solid indiumless residue needs to be baked in a rotary kiln. For hydrochloric acid, I need even more sulfuric acid. I made hydrochloric acid, diluted it, and started leaching indium. In total, I needed 80 buckets of hydrochloric acid. A lot of the steps are done in a batch reactor, so a second one is a very good idea. I also need a lot of soda ash, so I need to start roasting trona. With the soda ash, I extracted the indium out, and this indium residue needs to be reacted with sodium hydroxide. And that means I have to make a lot of it. 1 bucket per dust, so 80 buckets of sodium hydroxide. Neutralization yields indium hydroxide, which needs to be reacted with sulfuric acid to produce crude indium sulfate. Crude indium sulfate is purified by bubbling hydrogen sulfide. Then, indium sponge is precipitated by zinc. Zinc sulfate can be electrolyzed to give sulfuric acid back. And that's how I made indium hydroxide. I need to make hydrogen sulfide for purification, and the easiest way for me is to make iron sulfide, which is just roasting iron and sulfur. Unsurprisingly, it was easy to make, and I started the end of indium processing. Purified indium sulfate was precipitated by zinc. I grabbed the electrolyzer from aluminum processing and electrolyzed zinc sulfate to get sulfuric acid back. And then I finished neutralizing the leach with sodium hydroxide. Zinc sulfate sadly gives diluted acid, but I reused my distillery tower from polyethylene. And when it was done distilling, I started the loop again. And again, and again, and again, and then I processed the last of indium sulfate. Then the last indium sponge was macerated. The extraction of third additional element from sphalerite was done. Zinc leach residue is sent to a batch reactor, whereby diluted hydrochloric acid, indium leach is extracted. Indium leach is reacted with soda ash to produce indium residue and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is mixed with sodium hydroxide solution to produce sodium carbonate solution, which is distilled into soda ash to be sent to a batch reactor. Indium residue is reacted with sodium hydroxide to produce indium hydroxide, which is then reacted with sulfuric acid to produce indium sulfate. Indium sulfate is purified by hydrogen sulfide and then purified. Indium sulfate is precipitated by zinc. Indium sponge is macerated and sent into storage, and zinc sulfate solution is recycled into zinc, sulfuric acid and oxygen. Now it's time for zinc hydrochloric residue. It requires a rotary kiln, the first MV machine of the playthrough. And since I did not have time off camera to finish crafting circuits, I made them now. I made the controller, grabbed structure blocks and built the multi-block. To kiln the residue, I will need some burnable fuel. Methane, natural gas or fuel oil. Fuel oil is obtained from petrochemistry. I don't want to do natural gas, so the only option left is methane. It can be made by fermenting biomass, and biomass is made by mixing biochaff with water. Biochaff is just macerated plant balls which are made from wheat. Some farming, some mixing, and now I had methane. The kilning will result in germanium-rich oxide dust, which needs to be leached with sulfuric acid. Germanium leach needs to be then reacted with tannic acid to concentrate germanium. Germanium concentrate is reacted with chlorine and hydrochloric acid to produce germanium tetrachloride. Germanium tetrachloride is then distilled and reacted with ultrapure water to precipitate germanium oxide. Ultrapure water can be distilled from different purified waters. The best one now is the aerated water, which is a step beyond demineralized water. But going back to germanium, I made sulfuric and tannic acid. I leached and concentrated germanium and made more hydrochloric acid. The easiest way to get chlorine is to make sodium hydroxide. And with copper-nickel spring, I began making germanium tetrachloride. So while it's processing, I can start making ultrapure water. To demineralize, I will need molecular sieve, and for that I need to make type X zeolite. The zeolite solution is made with sodium aluminate and sodium silicate. Then combine zeolite with clay and got molecular sieve. But I still need a machine to use it, an ion exchange column. I will do two, since I need to make a lot of water. I also need a vacuum chamber to deaerate it, and I again made two. I started the process and made a distillery for the last step. It needs to be MV since power requirement. Demineralize, deaerate, distill, almost 2 buckets for 16 water buckets. And it wasn't really as painful as I thought. Nevertheless, I precipitated germanium with it and got germanium oxide. The last step needs a tube furnace and hydrogen. Hydrogen from electrolysis and germanium was done. Zinc hydrochloric residue is sent into a rotary kiln where it is made into whaled slag and germanium-rich oxide. Whaled slag is centrifuged and sent into storage, and germanium-rich oxide is leached with sulfuric acid. Germanium leach is then precipitated with tannic acid, which is made on site in a distillery and a chemical bath. Zinc leach is sent back into precipitation, and germanium concentrate is reacted with chlorine and hydrochloric acid. Germanium tetrachloride is distilled and precipitated with ultrapure water. Hydrochloric acid is sent back into batch reactor, and germanium dioxide is smelted in a tube furnace with hydrogen. Germanium is sent into storage, and then steam is voided in a smokestack. The only thing left is zinc flue gas. I just need to sift it to get solid particles out, then once again leach it with sulfuric acid. Then I need to add salt into impure cadmium sulfate to precipitate thallium. In an MV sifting machine, I sifted it all. In the end, I had almost a stack of dust and 10 grams of sulfur dioxide. Dissolved zinc flue in sulfuric acid and reacted it with salt. I only got 6 moles of thallium chloride. I dissolved it in diluted sulfuric acid for acidic thallium sulfate, and then distilled it to deacidify. And that's where the process stops. The final step needs platinum rod, and I can't get it right now. As for cadmium sulfate, I process it like before. In the end, I got additional 56 cadmium. Zinc flue gas is sifted in an MV sifting machine. Sulfur dioxide is voided, and zinc flue dust is leached with sulfuric acid. Ashes are voided, and impure cadmium sulfate is reacted with salt to produce cadmium sulfate and thallium chloride. Cadmium sulfate is sent into cadmium processing, and thallium chloride is dissolved in diluted sulfuric acid. Acidic thallium sulfate is distilled and electrolyzed into thallium, which goes into storage, and sulfuric acid, which is diluted and sent back to batch reactor. And this was roughly all of Sphalerite processing. I got some new elements, and now I'm ready to progress to another chapter.
Widzisz mnie?
Co?
Widzisz mnie?
Ancient prophecy said I will get chromite by mining it by hand. I made appropriate preparations and went mining. On scanner, chromite was shown as only half a vein, so I knew it's somewhere in the cavern. Went down and looked for it at different levels. I found it at the bottom and started mining. I only mined 2 stacks and I went back. Chromite dust needs to be roasted in a rotary kiln with soda ash and a lot of oxygen. Chromium soda mixture is washed with distilled water to make sodium chromate. Sodium chromate is then mixed with sulfuric acid and distilled for sodium dichromate. Roasted with carbon to make chromium soda ash mixture and wash it with normal water to wash out soda ash. Chromium-free oxide is then reacted with aluminium in reaction furnace to produce alumina and chromium. Almost all of the machines needed need to be MV tiered, so some quick crafting and machine line was ready. And so I continued the process. While distilling sodium chromate, it's better to choose the circuit for sulfuric acid so you can loop it. And you can't use coke for roasting, so remember to turn it into carbon. And distill soda ash solution back to soda ash so you can loop the chain. The last step needs a reaction furnace and another MV multiblock. I built it in front of rotary kiln. And put first chromium-free oxide to be turned into chromium. And that's really it. I processed chromite into chromium-free oxide and that into chromium. In the end, I made 2 stacks of chromium, which will be enough for future uses. And even if I run out, it's very easy to do. Chromite is roasted with soda ash in a rotary kiln. Roasted chromite is washed with distilled water to produce sodium chromate. Sodium chromate is then reacted with sulfuric acid and distilled. Sulfuric acid goes back into CSTR, and sodium dichromate is roasted with carbon. Carbon monoxide is voided, and chromium soda ash mixture is washed with water. Soda ash solution is distilled, soda ash goes back into rotary kiln, and water goes back into batch reactor. Chromium oxide is then sent into a reaction furnace. Aluminium comes from outside, is macerated, and also is sent to reaction furnace. Chromium oxide is reduced, chromium is stored in a drawer, and alumina is sent into aluminium processing. Food making starts in the nether. I need to find bismuthinite so I can make bismuth bronze. Why bismuth bronze? It's used for electric baking oven. I could use steam baking oven, but it's slow and I don't like it. So I looked for bismuthinite. I don't even need a lot of it. About 13 ores. And after some time, I found a vein. On the scanner, it showed a very low amount, and so I thought it's on the ceiling or the floor. On the way down, I intersected a kimberlite vein. I mined some, as I will need it later. And then I got to wolframite vein. They are just really small, and I only got 5 bismuthinite. The vein was open to the nether cavern, and exploring it for another vein would be easier and faster than mining. But during breeding, something reminded of itself. My air supply going out, and I suffocated. I went back for my stuff and returned to tunnel layer. and after some digging, bismuthinite once again appeared on the scanner. And as expected, I became a ghost, faced for blocks, and died while digging down. I came back for my stuff, digged to bismuthinite, and mined the rest that I need. After getting back, I grinded it to dust, and started processing it to bismuth. Roast with oxygen for bismuth oxide, and then roast with coke to reduce to bismuth. Bismuth bronze, for some reason, is made of brass, but it's nothing for me since I process Sphalerite. Just imagine what would I need to do if I haven't done that. I mixed it, then mixed again with bismuth, and I had bismuth bronze dust. I put it into EBFs to smelt, and now I have a lot of time to do other things. I made an assembling machine, an extruder, and I remembered I have kimberlite. Sifted it for diamonds, made an MV lathe, and made 2 glass lenses. I want to make night vision goggles, so that's why I'm doing it. I need a battery for them, and I can't use lead acid. I will do cadmium. It needs potassium hydroxide, which can easily be made by electrolyzing rock salt solution. But I don't have it, and I can't make it. Other option is to react potassium carbonate with hydrochloric acid. The most common way to get it is brine evaporation, but luckily you can wash wood ash. And so I did, and then used J for uses and saw that you can turn it straight into potassium hydroxide. And that's what I did. I then made nickel oxide hydroxide and assembled the battery. Combined it with remaining components and realized I have 2 things binded to the same key. In that time I was making night vision goggles. EBFs produce enough bismuth bronze to finish the oven. I also made ingredients for beans on toast. Formed bread, juiced the tomatoes and combined it with beans. Baking oven has a mechanic to set the working temperature, so I set to 450 degrees. Then I baked the beans, and then took a break to bake the bread. And then I sliced the bread. Baked beans bake slowly, so I added an additional slice to baking oven. Now it can do 2 parallels. Beans were done, so I toasted the bread and combined it into beans on toast. And I am not even hungry after all this work. And that is all for this episode. I processed zinc, made chromium, and cooked beans on toast. In the next episode, I will be making silicon and brine processing. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode of SuSy No Automation Challenge.